hello, hello, and thank you so much for joining me on the Get Your Guide Coaching Podcast. I'm so excited to have this guest here today. She has an amazing book called What the F Do I Do Now? Teresa Johnson, aka Reesa Teesa, who went mega viral. I want to say a year or two ago, a couple of
Yeah.
years ago, where she was talking about who the F she got married to. So, Reesa, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, girl. I'm so glad that we get to talk a little bit about your experiences because I feel like it's the experience of so many women out there, but it's just not talked about a lot. So
Mhm.
I'm really honored that you're here, and I just want to commend you for the vulnerability that it took to actually create that big, mega viral series that you had out there.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know it was going to take off the way it did, but what a ride, man. It has been
Girl.
a journey. It's
Wait,
been a
let's get into the virality of it all because when I saw that I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like a hot ass mess. And that's no shade to you. That just sounds like a lot. And then there's so many things that happened afterward. And so can you talk a little bit just about that experience and like what were people saying? Like what were some of the opportunities that came after that? Because I don't even we don't have to go through it. I know everybody has already like knows about it.
So, what were people saying? I think the best way to put it is what were people not saying? It was kind of a roller coaster effect because when it first came out, there was I think the majority of people and the majority of the comments were like, "What in the world?" And then the tide kind of changed a bit, and
It does
there was
that.
it,
Anyone
it
that does
does.
anything viral, it either starts out good and it goes bad, or it starts out
Mhm.
bad and it goes good. That's the natural flow of
Yeah.
virality, I've learned.
And in my case, it went from bad to good. So it definitely started out with she is dumb, she's lying,
Mm.
she made it up for clout, she's desperate. What did she think she was going to get? Like she deserved it. And then over time, really within about 2 or 3 weeks, it kind of changed after I did an appearance on Good Morning America. And I really feel like that appearance kind of helped people see beyond the hashtag. It was a real person who really went through something truly traumatic. And then you
Yeah.
saw a lot of people who were coming out of the woodworks who were like, listen, same thing happened to me. Same thing happened to a friend of mine, or it happened to a family member. And it wasn't just women, it was men too.
Mm.
So I definitely experienced the lows of going viral, but I definitely was blessed to kind of experience the highs of it. And the thing with going viral is that you do get a lot of opportunities. Brands want to work with you, speaking engagements.
Yeah,
You
did
get
you get like flights? Saw BMW maybe wanted to work with you in some way or partner with you.
BMW. Yeah,
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
BMW entered the chat, but that's the extent of it. And so,
Oh, okay.
there was a lesson learned that I talk about in the book. I actually, in my book, talk about what happened with BMW
Okay.
and the lesson that I learned from it, which is a lesson that I think any person can apply in any business situation. Understand that words have meaning. So,
Yeah.
but that story is in the book. Yeah, there were flights. There were Delta chimed in, Hilton chimed in. So there were a lot of opportunities. And then there were opportunities like for television appearances. I worked with Target. I was on Good Morning America, Tamron
Mhm.
Hall.
Mhm.
There's opportunities for you to take the story as far as you can. It just depends on how comfortable you are talking about it over and over and over again. But
Yeah.
life changed very drastically
It
overnight,
sounds
pretty
like it.
much.
It sounds like it. Now, I know personally that the TikTok feed disappears, but a book kind of sits on the shelf forever. So let's
Yeah.
talk about like why you decided to write this book, and like what was the scariest part for you while you were writing this book?
So the why really was a natural fit. Once I signed with CAA, the question that they asked me was, okay, what do you want to do with this story? Like you put it on social media. Now what do you want to do? And so my response was very heartfelt. I said, I want to take this story as far as I can on
Mhm.
as many platforms as I can. That was what my heart was. And so they were like, well, what does that look like? And immediately I said, I want a book. So for the people who paid attention to the series, the way that I recorded the series was to be recorded like an audiobook. You don't have
Mm.
to watch your television to watch all 50 parts. You can literally just start with part one and it goes directly to two and three, and you can just listen. I am an audiobook person. I love being able to ride in the car, go wherever, and listen to
Yeah.
an audiobook. So books are important to me. I also feel like books, like you said, like books are forever. Now, granted, the internet is also forever, but there's something about being a published author that I have just always felt like that is the Mount Everest. Like it is such an important thing. And so when the opportunity came to write a book, I did not want to rehash the 50-part series, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to act like I got it all figured out, because that's not true. Instead,
Mhm.
I wanted to write a book that was real, that was like, y'all, these are the mistakes I've made. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'm still learning. And here's how I'm trying to pick up the pieces of what really was a debris field of my life. And
Mm.
so that was what my intentions were with this book. I'm not going to sit up here and act like I'm a relationship expert. Not at
Yeah,
all.
girl, don't try to take my gig, girl.
I'm not. I'm not qualified. I ain't sanctified. I'm none of that. But what I am is a woman who's trying.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of women and men out there who are trying to figure it out. And the title of the book, What the F Do I Do Now, is because literally in almost every chapter of my life, I am asking myself, what do I do now? Like it did not go the way I thought it was going to go. What do I do now? And so that's where the title came from. It's a real question I ask myself
Yeah. I love that.
all
I
the
love
time.
that. So let's get into it, girl, because
Mhm.
I think the book is beautiful, but I want to talk about Risa before the relationship, right? And
Mhm.
like, this is some of the work that we do in my program, but like, a woman who gets into that situation, I want to hear about some of the earlier messages that you had as it pertained to love, dating, relationships, men, worthiness, love. What were some of those things that you were told, especially, and we've had conversations
Mhm.
before this, especially being a church girl.
Ugh, growing up in the church, the church is
I
my
grew up in the church
foundation.
too, girl, so
I know
I know a little bit of it.
it is
I
my
don't know how it is
foundation.
to be a woman in the church though, so I'd love for you to share that part.
It's my foundation. It really is. And yet, as I get older, I understand it was not the most solid foundation to be raised on. And here's what I mean by that. For me, I was raised by a single mom. My mother has never wanted to get married. And I talk about that also in the book, but she's never wanted to get married. So she has always been I don't believe that that's what God has for me, but if that's what, you want, then I believe that God will give you the desires of your heart. There was never a time when growing up, I did not think or was not taught marriage and children were kind of the end game.
Mm,
Like
mhm,
that is the pinnacle. So for me, it was like, yes, you can date a guy, date and get to know him. Don't have premarital sex, but date, get to know him, and you guys need to be equally yoked. Then you need to get married, and then you have children, and you raise them in the church to go ahead and repeat the same thing that we're teaching you. It never dawned on me to be single and not be married. It was not something my mom instilled in me. She took me to church, 3, 4 times a week, but it was always, I don't want you to be a single mom like I was. That was her message. I just don't want that for you. So
mm.
if God made a
Let's stop
husband
there a
for
second because I
me,
think that that's a really important point that I don't think a lot of Black women talk about
yeah.
because, three-quarters of Black households were single parent and let's be
Mhm.
honest, single mother households.
Mhm.
And a lot of pressure, passive pressure, is also we get from our mothers saying,
Yeah.
hey, I don't want you to be in the position that I'm in. And so there's
Mhm.
this pressure to get married, even though we see a model that looks very different. Thank you
Right.
so
And
much for
and
bringing
the
that up. I think it's important.
And the model I saw was a mom who, my mother was on welfare. So my mom struggled in terms of raising me. And she was just very adamant. I don't want that for you. I
Mm,
want you to, you should be someone's wife, someone's mother. If you want children, I want you to do it the right way, which is something I talk a lot about in the book because that was the thing that I understood. The right way is you meet a guy, you all date, you should be both involved in the church, and then you get married, you stay in the church, you serve in the church, you have children, you get them baptized. Like that's the right way.
And the right way
Um,
is also you get married and you stay married.
and you stay married. Yeah.
Hmm.
Even if it's to your detriment. So in my family, my grandparents were married, over 40 years. I never saw like physical abuse. So there was always a line in the sand. Don't you let no man beat you. Okay, now
Right.
now that's too far. You don't let him beat you. But there was never a discussion on he should be honest with you, he should respect you, he should talk to you a certain way, you should be his helpmate, you should be his partner. It was just always God hates divorce. And
Hmm.
in the series that I did, I talked about one of the struggles I had was even when all of this evidence finally came out with my ex-husband, I still struggled with the fact that ever since I was like 4, I have known God hates divorce. And
Mm.
so it was still, even as a 35-year-old woman, a struggle from my childhood because it's like you've always been taught once you get married and you make that vow is forever, even if it turns out that he has made up a whole life and has lied to you every single day of the week, you need to figure a way out. So there's things that I discovered that yes, I was taught, and yes, I was, in the church, that was my foundation. But some of those teachings were absolutely to my detriment. And I can admit that now as a grown woman who is walking her own walk with God
Yeah.
and not the
Thank you.
walk that I was raised on.
Bold. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of church girls out there are going to be like, yes, girl, you're speaking the truth because to your point, I think the church teaches marriage, but it doesn't necessarily teach how to date. And I think that
Yes.
hurts so many
Yeah.
church girls out there because to your point, the end goal is marriage. So when you get there, you're like, okay, I quote unquote won, or I've done what God
Mhm.
has told me that I need to do without realizing that learning how to date well obviously will give you a better or greater marriage, but also
Mhm.
will make you a better partner because you will know more about yourself. But those things aren't
Exactly.
necessarily stressed in the church. And if
Yeah.
anything, actually frowned upon. Like you shouldn't
Mhm.
be out here too much.
Right. Like because there's nothing good that happens after 10 o'clock. So to your point, yes, there was definitely moments of like, you should date, but you really should only date while the sun is up. Because after the sun
Right.
goes down, what are y'all doing?
Girl, the first question I ask every woman I coach is, what's your strategy for dating? And you know what they say? Nothing. Not a Prada. Because they don't have one. Because no one ever taught them one. Their mama didn't teach them one. Their grandmama didn't teach them one. What they do hear from their mama or grandmother is, don't get pregnant and don't be fast. And they call it a day. That's not strategy. That's survival. My new book, Girl Get Your Guy, which drops February 2nd, 2027, is all about strategy. The strategy that nobody handed you. The do's, the don'ts, the whys, and the hows. Because when you understand why you do what you do, you can finally show up as who you really are. And that's the woman you become when you are at your highest frequency and level. One more thing. Less than 6% of New York Times bestseller authors are Black. When you pre-order this book, you're not just changing your love life, you're helping put a Black author on that list and crack the door open for the next one. So go to girlgetyourguy.com, pre-order today, for you, for your daughters, for all of us. Ciao, ciao. Yeah,
See?
honey, apparently it's a sundown town, girl. You have to stay indoors. I want to circle back to something that you said that I think is really important because I think there are a lot of individuals. I think your case is somewhat extreme. May
Mhm.
I say that?
Yeah.
And I think some people are still wondering, like, being in such a situation, I think is like, how do we get there? You mentioned growing up
Mhm.
and financially struggling. And I
Mhm.
think that that like plays a really big part in how we interact in relationships and dare I say struggle love. Like these
Yeah.
things that like come up because you're so used to getting over the hump this month and
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know paying these bills and not paying
Mhm.
these bills and hiding from the bill collectors and doing all of that. I think there's something inside of us that realizes like, well, this isn't so bad because I literally have experienced something like this every month. So we don't clock it like
Yeah.
maybe somebody else would,
Mhm.
um, who has a different lived experience. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that? Is that part of your experience or, um,
My experience with my ex-husband. So as I had said before, and I was very honest about it, I was living paycheck to paycheck. I
So we were still struggling.
I was crawling to pay to literally touch the hem of Jesus's garment
Oh
by payday.
Lord.
I would,
Okay.
because literally, on average, by the time I got paid, I worked for the state at the time. I got paid on the 15th and last day of the month.
Mhm.
So the day before payday, I was grateful to have like $1.12 in my account. That meant it wasn't overdrawn. That was my mentality. Yes, my bills were paid, but there was no money to live, which is something
Mm.
I'm gonna circle back to. Bills were paid, but there was no money to live. So here comes this guy who, one of the things that my heart's desire was, going back to, foundation, was someone who's a provider. And here's a guy who, yes, I was shacking up, living in sin, but he was paying all the bills to the point where one of the things I said was it was intoxicating to not be strapped, living paycheck to paycheck. It felt
Yeah.
so good to be able to make it to payday, and it's like, oh my God, I have almost $200 in my account before and tomorrow's payday. Like, I'm not struggling to the point of I need to make a payment arrangement with Georgia Power. Unfortunately, in my case, it definitely allowed me to turn my head to certain things that I would not have turned my head on. It definitely allowed me to see more of the fairy tale than the reality, because here I am, I'm able to breathe, I'm able to live. And so the things that were like, I should be questioning, I wasn't questioning, because it's like, I mean, I don't know how he got paid, but he paid the rent. So in normal circumstances, I should not have been so concerned with the fantasy, the big house, the cars, the vacations, the trips. Yes, these are things I've always wanted, but because I was so focused on that, I wasn't paying attention to the cracks that were showing up, and I didn't start paying attention until almost it was too late. But absolutely, I was guilty of the fact that, oh my God, I can breathe and
Yeah.
I'm not struggling. He's not asking me, do you got your half? He wasn't doing any of that. He was like, I got it. And the more he said I got it, the more I just was like, well, shoot, like this is great. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people, because especially if you've been in a relationship before where you were struggling. And I know what that's like to be in a relationship where the person you're with is really not much of a financial help. And
Mm.
so you can do bad by yourself. And then
Right.
you
That
get
that person becomes more
someone,
of a dependent than a
yes.
partner.
And
Uh-huh.
then you get with someone who actually shows you what it feels and looks like for them to provide for you. And it's almost like, where have you been my whole life? Instead
Yeah.
of questioning why certain
All
things
the other
don't make
stuff.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up because I think that's the case for so many women
Mhm.
who are living paycheck to paycheck, and
Yeah.
I think women of color generally that are working so hard for not as much, and because of that, might have associated money wounds involved, and so.
Mhm.
It's one of the reasons why, I think Sprinkle Sprinkle Share 7 is very popular because I do
Mhm.
think that it hits upon, okay, get a provider so that you can feel that way. So you can
Yeah.
feel like this security that maybe you haven't felt. But I
Mhm.
think that your story is such a really great example of but there could be consequences. There could be
Mhm.
another side of it that having a
Yeah.
provider isn't just financial, it is
Mhm.
also emotional. It is
Yeah.
also providing solutions, right? It
Mhm.
is also providing care,
Yeah.
right? There's so much provision and it's not just financial. So I'm so
Mhm.
glad that you've been able to recognize that in the work that you've done,
Yeah.
after this situation, during and after this situation.
Yeah.
Your subtitle, Reclaiming Myself One Piece at a Time.
Mhm.
It's beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because
Yeah.
after you go through such a situation, how were you able to kind of piece yourself together? I think so many people go through similar situations and
Mhm.
just stay broken. So like what was your first kind of step in being able to move forward?
So the reclaiming myself piece, one piece at a time, it stems from the fact that I talk about how life was shattered. And I try to make a very good distinction. Shattered and broken sometimes can be two different things, because I feel like when something is shattered, it will never be what it once was. Never.
Hmm. Yeah.
No matter how long you take to try to meticulously put together each and every piece, it won't. And so, what I felt like I had to do was, number one, acknowledge the fact I'm never going to be the same. I'm simply not. That doesn't mean that I have to be worse. It doesn't mean that I have to still be, kind of a cynic when it comes to relationships and love. It just simply means that the way that I operate, the way that I think, the way that I move is different than the person I was before this relationship. I'm okay with that. So that was my first, step. My second step I felt like was I had a choice, because there comes a time when everyone's going to get to a fork in the road. You see people who sometimes they never healed, and it's almost like the scab of a wound. It it's an ugliness to it. It's an ugliness to it. They never healed. They're never the same, but there's something about them where they chose to go left, and they chose to be cynical. They chose to be bitter. They chose to be angry. They chose to be, those are the ones that I hear people on social media are like, you just hate men. And I think to myself, she didn't start that way. She didn't
Right.
start that way. No one came out the womb and was like, I hate men. So that's the fork in the road. Then you could go to the right, where you're like, listen, I want to believe. It's going to take me some time to get to a place where I want to try and I want to put in effort, but I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to be sad. I want to still respect the fact that who I am on the inside still deserves good and happiness,
Yeah.
but it's going to take some time to get there. This book is coming at the fork in the road, where I'm simply saying I'm trying to heal. I'm on the process of healing. I'm trying to find my laugh again. I'm trying to
Mm.
find dance again. I'm trying to be the version of me that has learned from it and is not letting it define me. Because I have met people on this journey, they have let their story define them
Mm.
instead of learning from it and letting it be a part of, like, a chapter in their life. And I don't want to be that.
That makes
That's
a lot
where
of
the
sense.
reclaiming myself one piece at a time, because it is going to take a while, and it's okay. And I'm not pushing myself to try to hurry up and get it figured out. Instead, I feel so much better in owning the fact that, y'all, I don't have it all figured out, but here's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I've learned so far. And hopefully I'm gonna share it with you guys, and you all can identify with some piece of this book. That's where my attitude comes from.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. As you were describing that, one of the things that came to my mind is there are a lot of people out there that probably would never trust again.
Hmm.
So, where's your trusting meter? And how is that increasing as time goes by?
Trusting meter with someone new, it's kind of low.
On a
It's
scale from
low.
0 to 10, where is it?
Probably like a 3 or 4.
Okay. Before, where was it?
So before all this happened, I probably started at an 8 or 9,
Okay.
which is very unhealthy. And when you
Why do you
start,
think that you were so trusting before?
the reason why is because I have had a horrible history of dating potential and not reality. And I would fall so head over heels with the potential. What does my first name look like with his last name? I'd
Hmm.
fall head over heels for the fantasy, because again, marriage was my end game. It was my goal. It was I do not want to be someone's baby mom. I want to be a wife. I want my last name changed. Like, these are things that were always very, very important to me. So when I would meet a guy, the first thing that I'm thinking about is whether or not I could be married to him, because that was
Mm.
how my upbringing was. So
Let
I
me stop you
started.
right there for a second because I think this is an important point. In my program, we call this a fantasy, problematic dating
Mhm,
pattern,
mhm.
where, and I want to clarify this for all of the listeners that are out there because we still have some fantasy girls out there,
Yeah,
that oftentimes the fantasy comes from the fact that growing up, you wanted your life to be different. Now, I don't know if
yeah,
that's your reality, but I'm
yeah.
just saying for my clients, it's
Hmm.
I wanted my mom to do something different. I wanted my
Hmm.
dad to be there or do
Hmm.
something different, right? I wanted
Hmm.
them to be more caring. I wanted to have more quality time with them. I wanted my life, I wanted to be richer. I wanted to be in a different house. I wanted to have
Yeah,
specific toys. I wanted to be
yeah.
in certain activities. And so the way in which we kind of fill those voids as growing up
Mhm.
is to create these fantasies growing up, and then that translates into our adulthood. And now
Right.
we're creating fantasies about how this person can save my current
Mhm.
reality in the same way that we wanted someone to come in and save our past reality. Is that
Right.
relevant for you?
So so that's extremely relevant for me. Like I said, I grew up with a single mom. And for a good portion of my childhood, she was on welfare. So automatically, I've always wanted the 5 bedroom house, the 2 cars, the 2.5 kids, the suburb life, because I saw that as a goal as a kid. Because
Mm.
again, when you're living on government assistance and ramen noodles, it's like you dream of something different. You do,
Yeah,
because
of course.
especially as someone who went to school with certain kids who appeared to have that at home, it
Hmm.
really was also just like, man, I want that. Also, the thing was, and I do own this in the book, I never met my father. Have no idea what he looks like. If he was one of your producers, I would not know it. So it was very important to me for marriage because I wanted my kids to have the one thing I never had, which was a
Hmm.
present father. And in my mind, the only way for us to have a present father for the kids, we needed to be married. We need to be in the same house. All of us need the same last name. And so this was the nuclear fantasy that I always wanted because I absolutely grew up a statistic, the product of a single mom. It was like, well, she might graduate high school, but then she might have kids. She's going to
Right.
repeat her mother's footsteps, and so it was really important to me early on. I want my kids to have a dad.
Yeah.
I want my
We
daughters.
wanted to rewrite history.
Yes, I never wanted my daughters to do the things that I did, which I remember looking in the mirror trying to understand where does my skin color. I remember asking my mom, "Where does my skin color come from?" Because she's darker than me, and I was like, "Where does my height come from?" Because I'm taller than you, and she was like, "Well, your dad, your dad was tall," and I never wanted my kids to think, "Where do my features come from? What does
Hmm.
he look like?" Even that, and I say this in the book that there came a point where I can't use that as an excuse. The absence of a father for the actions of a grown woman. The choices I made were the choices I made, but those choices came from a 5-year-old little Reesa who was like, I want a husband. I want kids with my husband, and my daughters to be like, Daddy's home, and things like that. Things I never had. So you're absolutely correct. I'm the first one to tell you what you're
Yeah.
describing is truthfully how it was for me.
Thank you for sharing that because I think so many of us are engaging in our romantic relationships as
Mm.
our 5 or 8 year old selves,
Yes.
right? And I
Yeah.
think that this example in your story, I think is a really great example of that. So I wanna kind of commend you again for kind of sharing this. I also wanted to make a note for all of the women out there that are listening to me that are in relationships and those
Mm-hmm.
relationships have children in them. Your children want you to be happy
Mm-hmm.
and they know when you're not. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you're telling yourself that I want to stay in a relationship because it's going to be great for the kids, they would rather you not be in the relationship and
Yeah.
be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever needed to hear that, I wanted to share that with them. Okay, Risa, talk to me. Is there anything else that you want to share before we go? I think we've had such a really great conversation about where you were, how we got
Mm-hmm.
into the situation, how we, take steps forward, to reclaim ourselves after we have a setback. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
some would say a traumatic experience
Mm-hmm.
happened to us. Is there anything else that you want to share with my listeners before we go?
My hope and my prayer is that when people read this book, the one thing that they take away is that you do, just because life has happened and how it happens is very different for all of us, right? We all had something as a kid that we always wanted to be, but life happened. My goal and my hope is that as we are continuing day by day trying to figure out what the F do we do now, you
Mhm.
don't give up the dream you have. You're okay with editing it. You don't have to give it up. Whatever that dream was, it doesn't have to, you don't have to delete it. You can simply edit it to let it fit who you are now, because it is okay that we are not the same version of ourselves at 10. We are not the same version of ourselves at 21. In my case, 30, 35, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It is okay. But the main thing is don't give up on your dream.
And
Let's
what's
just
your
say this.
edited dream now, girl?
I want to experience love, but I want a healthy love. And I would rather not be in a relationship than to have a relationship where I feel unseen, I feel disrespected, I feel lied to. I am learning day by day in this very moment. I'm learning to try to accept the fact that the idea for motherhood and marriage may not look the way I thought it was going to.
Mm,
It may not be a biological motherhood.
mm,
The reason I'm okay with admitting that is because I found out very recently there are a lot of women who understand that. And so I don't feel so by myself when I say, being childless by circumstances rather than by choice. So my edited dream now is I'm not giving up on motherhood, but I understand that I may need to edit what motherhood looks like for me at this stage. It may
mm,
not be biological.
mhm.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning to say that's okay, but I'm also learning to really mean it.
Mm,
It's okay. And to accept
awesome.
that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for being here. The
Thank
book
you.
is called What the F Do I Do Now? Reesa Teesa, Teresa Johnson. Thank you so much for being with me. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right, ladies. I hope that this conversation was helpful for you. Please pick up the book. When does it come out?
It comes out August 18th, but it is available for pre order now. And yes, there is an audio version.
Let the people know. All right, ladies, be well. I'll see you on the flip side. Bye bye.